Right, so we've done money, but we're going to revisit a little money because we want to talk about the money market, what it is and what it does, the role it has. First of all, what is money? This is important in the present day context. What is money? Talked about the functions of money. Remember the two functions, well there's four, but two of them are, it's a means of exchange, an easy, convenient means of exchange, an accepted means of exchange. But also a store of value, so you can keep value, you can maintain the value you have, you earn in the economy. Now, money can be notes and coins, as we know. We consider, if I say, what is money? We automatically think of this. But actually, most of the money is not that. Most of the money in the economy is just deposits in banks that don't exist, just numbers, records of deposits in banks. Something like 10% of the money in the economy is real notes and coins. Most of it are just banks creating deposits. They can create deposits. Or we can consider near money. So that's assets that can be changed into money. That could be bonds. Remember what bonds are? Normally sold by the government. You can have bonds sold by companies, etc. But think of the government sells bonds too, mainly, and that can be converted into money, or shares, obligations, different types of shares, etc. So anything that can be changed into cash quickly. We call that near money or liquid assets. We can use the term liquid assets. The more liquid, the more easier it is to change into money. So that's what we can consider is money. Remember, that's the store of value and the accepted means of exchange. So often we don't use, so talk about bank deposits, we don't use cash in many transactions. Buying a house, you don't go with 500,000 in cash, obviously. You just transfer it from one bank to another. Or car, if you buy a car, holiday often on credit card. The banks are just transferring money. If a bank receives money, it can lend it out, obviously, and there's a deposit there. So that money has multiplied. If the same money comes in and out of the same bank, it will be creating deposits, won't it? More and more deposits. But it's still the same money, so you can understand it multiplies. The bank deposits can multiply the money in the economy. There are restrictions to this. Obviously, the government doesn't want too much money in the economy. We know we can get inflation if there's too much money. So there's controls, but banks do create money. There's a statistic here. Something like 90% of the money in America is bank deposits. Well, I said that before. The national income is not the total quantity of money. It is the speed. The speed money circulates can create the national income. If I spend this with somebody and they spend it with somebody else, €20, and it goes around 5 people, that's €100 worth of income from this one note. So it's not, the quantity of money is not all the money together, but the number of transactions, the speed of the circulation affects the quantity of money. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the money market. So what is the money market? We know a market is all the supply and all the buying, the purchasers together. That makes a market for a specific product or a specific service. You can think of houses, the housing market. That's all the buyers together and all the sellers together. That makes a market. But we can also have a market for money. Money, obviously, is in big demand. So, but for investment, as well as consumption, companies need money to invest, to grow. And there's a market for this. And the price of money, we can think, because in a market there's a price for whatever service or product is in the market. The price of money is the interest rate. So the suppliers of money, which are the banks, charge an interest rate. Or the finance houses, there's often different financial institutions like insurance, they create certain value for their financial products, and there's a price for that money. Maybe a loan or whatever. But the buyer must pay. So he's looking for the cheapest money, the lowest interest rate. And the banks are always trying to maximise the interest rate to earn more. So it's a market. That's the money market. So, yeah, we've got the normal banking, commercial banks that create deposits, and the central bank issues or permits the issue of the money we know we can touch. The coins and the notes are issued by the central bank, and they can enter the system through the central bank and distributed by the central bank. So now we're going to look at the functions of a commercial bank. So we know what a commercial bank is. A commercial bank is any of the banks you see on the high street. We can think of San Paolo, Unicredit, all these big banks. They're commercial banks. They're looking to make a profit, just businesses, private businesses, looking to supply the customers with services, financial services. Now, the commercial banks, obviously they make money using interest rates. They can charge interest rates on financial services, maybe organise management funds to invest in the stock market, and they'll take a percentage, or maybe issue credit cards, bank transfers. They do transfers of money, buying and selling of shares in or even bonds, government bonds. Okay, so they do lots of services, and they're the commercial banks. Right. Now, the central bank has more of a public role. It doesn't have to be a private organisation. Some of them are private. America is private. I think in Italy also there's private organisation. But it's not there to make profit. It's got a public role. One of the public roles it has is the issuing of notes and coins, according to specific criteria, or maybe depending on the country, it might be under the control of the government. In some countries, the government authorise the central bank to issue more money or less money. In some countries, America, it has objectives, inflation, the value of the dollar, so it must keep within restrictions. It must decide, make a judgment how much dollars to issue and how much to slow the flow of money according to its objectives established by the government. So that's, it issues notes and coins. It's the government's bank. So any payments made to or from the government, just think taxes or payments maybe to public servants like me, etc., come from the central bank. That's the government's bank. It manages the national debt. Remember, the government is responsible for the national debt. So it will be issuing bonds. Remember, the national debt is, the government borrows money by selling bonds to the citizens, to maybe organisations, to foreigners, etc. That is the national debt. This will be managed by the central bank. They will be authorising sales and looking to sell more bonds or less bonds in different venues, and then have to pay off the ones that expire. The bonds that expire, they've got to pay them off. And then it supervises the banking system, so it's responsible for the regulations to make sure maybe it doesn't want banks to create too much deposits, too much money, so it puts a limit. It says the banks must keep 10% of their deposits in cash, so they can't lend out too much. The big depression, the big recession in 2007 were because there weren't enough regulations, and the banks could lend to anyone, and just really created this bubble. So it's the lender of last resort. So all the banks have accounts there, and if they run out of money and they have to pay deposits to people that want to withdraw their money, obviously the central bank must support the commercial banks, otherwise they collapse and people lose confidence. And then everybody wants to take their money from the commercial bank. If the commercial bank says, I've got no more money, I can't give you your money, the whole system collapses. It's built on confidence. So the central bank is the lender of the last resort. It always assures that it's there for stability and will pay the commercial banks if they really need it. So it's all the commercial banks have got accounts at the central bank where they can keep account of their financial position, status. And between each other as well. So, and then it's got the foreign currency reserves and the gold. So it keeps, Italy's got a massive amount of gold reserves, historically, because Italy was unstable politically and it needed to stabilise its currency, it kept billions and billions, hundreds of billions of lira, euro, of gold under the auspices of the central bank, under the supervision of the central bank, and also the foreign currency. Every country needs a stock of foreign currency so they can supply ultimately the businesses who want to import and need foreign currency, so they exchange their euros for dollars or whatever. And there's a lot of foreign currency kept at the central bank to keep this whole system circulating, keep things moving, the economy, the international economy moving. And then it's got the government's monetary policy. Now, by monetary policy, we're talking about interest rates. So it charges, the central bank charges a percentage for lending money to the commercial banks, and the commercial bank will add their percentage on top of that. So the initial interest rate comes from the central bank. They decide how expensive money is, and if the government wants more money in the economy, their monetary policy will be to make money very cheap. So they'll reduce the interest rate at the central bank, and then obviously the money ultimately to the customer is cheaper because the central bank supplies it to the commercial bank, which will supply it to the customer, and people will borrow more because it's cheap to borrow. Or if they want to restrict money, they will make it expensive, and the central bank can operate this policy by increasing interest rates and making it expensive, and people will borrow less and buy less and invest less, and there will be less money in the economy. So we will reduce inflation, increase employment, reduce employment. In fact, if there's less money in the economy, people will be employed less. But if you need to control inflation, that's the way. The opposite, of course, is making money very cheap, and then it circulates more, you get more inflation, but you've got more employment.